This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz, and I'm very excited to be speaking with Volker Bertelmann about Conclave. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. The day is over in Germany, but I mean, I see in Los Angeles, it's bright light.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
Yeah.
We last spoke 3.5 years ago about the music for Your Honor, and I
hmm
went back and listened to our conversation. We talked about Ammonite and Summerland, which were great scores that year. And there was no mention, I'm not sure if you didn't know yet or you couldn't say yet, of any future collaborations with Edward Berger, like All
hmm
Quiet on the Western Front and Conclave. You did mention him once, having worked with him before, but obviously the two of you have a really great relationship and some very high profile projects. What was it like getting to work with him again?
Well, I mean, it is fantastic. I mean, we have such a great way of working together, which is a good mixture of being challenged, but at the same time also having an amount of trust and feeling comfortable in terms of his way, what he wants from me. And at the same time, he also asks me a lot about new things. So, he wants to have not always the same source.
Well, I think this was definitely a little bit gentler than the All Quiet on the Western Front score. That sort
hmm
of makes me think of tanks and just sort of carnage. And this is a little bit more tentative, which I liked.
hmm hmm No, and it's also very delicate. It has a lot of, I would say that the main challenge was in a way to figure out, the tension at the same time. You're dealing with a lot of human topics in a way, like a lot of emotional topics, religious topics, and to actually bring them, give them the right tonality, but at the same time not losing the tension. That was mainly the challenge in that film.
Yeah, I'm curious about the religion part of it because I feel like religion obviously is associated very closely with music. A lot of major
Mhm.
religions, especially Christianity, there is a lot of music. But how did you want to approach that here?
Well, I mean, I was growing up in a very strong Christian community, so my world was always surrounded by Bach and chorals, and we were always singing together. There was a lot of it was in a way music was in our everyday life, something that was existing. And whenever I came in a church, I always have the feeling of my childhood because I hear the organ, I hear maybe people singing. So in the first place, obviously, you think about choirs and about organ music. Um, and when I thought about the Vatican and I saw the first pictures of the film, and I saw these big halls and big hallways where people are walking, big gardens, and it was very impressive. And at the same time, I wanted to fill them with religious music somehow, but with modern religious music. And so I was wondering, I was looking for an instrument and that replaces, for example, the organ. And I found a French instrument from the 50s called the crystal bachet, which is a instrument that is dealing with glass rods, and you need water and you just rub the glass rods, and then it creates a little bit like a glass harp sound, but it also is distorted in a way because it has a lot of resonance elements in the instrument. It looks a little bit like a spaceship, a very interesting instrument. And so that was the first draft that I sent to Edward, where I said, do you think that could work for the Vatican? And he said, oh, no, it sounds fantastic. Please move on with that instrument. So he was very curious. And so I invited a player from Paris coming to my studio, and he was playing with me a whole day, and we were experimenting. And that was the first, in a way, the first round of the film. And then from there onwards, obviously, I also use a lot of cello pieces, which I'm a big fan of cello, even though I'm not a cellist. I think if I haven't chosen piano, I would have been a cellist, I think.
That's really interesting. I
Mhm.
also feel like the film, there's definitely a lot of comedy. It's certainly not a comedy, but there are ways of reading it that way. But your music is full on dramatic. Do you feel like that you there's anything that you did to try to adjust for that kind of tone, or those are just funny moments in a film that is still quite powerful and overarchingly dramatic.
Yeah, I would say there was never the focus on being funny. I mean, that it was very interesting, and we all were not surprised. I mean, in a way, we when we were watching it, I also felt like the way the relationship between those guys and the phrases that are using are sometimes really intelligent, and there is definitely a kind of humor in there, but you don't think that people will laugh in the cinema. They might smile or something like that. But when I was at Toronto Film Festival and I saw the first, I was sitting in the premiere, we were all like, "Oh, great. I mean, this is a gift to the film because it also represents the fun and the pleasure of watching the film, besides the serious topics that can actually ease them a little bit more. You can actually digest them better, and you're open to an own opinion rather than you feel forced.
I was in the audience at that Toronto premiere
Ah,
also, and the benefit of seeing a film early at a festival is that it sticks with you. The problem is if you like the music, you have to wait a few months to be able to listen to it again. And there was
yeah.
one particular cue that really stuck with me, and I found it in listening to the music now that it's out. I don't know if it's Tears or Tears, that track, I'm not
It's
sure.
it's tears.
Tears, okay. So
Yeah.
that there's just sort of like a very tentative build that sort of stops and it repeats a little bit again towards the beginning. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, well, I would have to. I know that there's a cute tears, but I'm not. I have to maybe listen to it again.
It's
But
basically what it feels to me is it's sort of like it best on in a it represents sort of the tension building and almost sort of getting there and boiling over. That's how I sort of took it, and it was very interesting to me.
well, I mean, there's a lot of moments where I'm using these kind of string arpeggios and the kind of driving pizzicato motive that is in a way building and building and building, and you just think like this will soon the screen will explode in a way. But then it stops. And I think the nice thing about Edward and me working together is that he has a very precise idea of what the music does and when it shouldn't be there. And that is for me very, very helpful because obviously I offer ideas, but at the same time, I don't have always let's say the green card to get the carte blanche. That's the word. The carte blanche to actually do everything I want. A lot of times I get invited to do certain things, and then when I'm getting crazy, it's yeah. Can you actually go backwards? And with Edward, it's even sometimes more. He says, "I think you could." Even push a little bit more and make it more extreme because to hold in a way the tension with the music is in that sense the music plays an own character in the film because it helps the push and the pull, and it helps also to create always a serious thriller element in there that you need to make that whole to make the laughter stronger, but also to make the plot in a way very very serious.
I also think there's something about, hearing it in such a, big theater like the one where this one screened in Toronto. I also know I saw All Quiet at Toronto, but then most people ended up seeing it at home on Netflix. And so
Yeah.
I'm glad that this one is getting a theatrical release, but do you feel like the music still works the same way if you're, watching at home versus in a big theater with these, great sound systems?
Well, I think with All Quiet, I was happy with the transforming, even though obviously I saw it also in big, like really wonderful staged cinemas where you have the best, PA system in there. And obviously that's a total different experience when you physically are in a cinema. With this one, I think so as well. I think the way Edward works is actually a cinematic experience because the pictures are so artistically staged that it needs, in a way, a big screen to see the kind of graphic, like the artwork that he's producing, even though there's no dialogue, but there are pictures that are just explaining a lot about the whole the area, like the location, but also sometimes you don't have to, you don't need words. The film is just explaining by the pictures what's going on. And the music obviously is great in a big cinema because all the booms, all the low end of the score needs somehow to transport, you know, it needs to reflect in the audience. And I think it's a much more intense experience. But I think you will understand the film and the music as well in a smaller place.
And you have, of course, done some great work for TV. You have two shows coming out, here in the US very soon, The Day of the Jackal and Dune Prophecy, which I think they're both of them have are, remakes or spin-offs of existing material. Do you feel a certain pressure? Do you listen to the music from previous stuff, or do you like to sort of start fresh with those kinds of things?
I start fresh. It's the same with All Quiet. I never looked at the other films beforehand. I don't like that. In a way, I have the feeling when I'm getting asked, people want my music and my expression. And I obviously look into the time period and I inform myself about what's in there. With Dune, I saw also the cinema movies. But at the same time, I had the feeling it's good that I'm getting disconnected from that approach because it's easy to join something that is already working. But I wanted to find something that is in a way also reflecting the series, and that's a different format. So you have to work with different elements. You need to find more themes that are very sticking with you because you in the next episode you want to you just remember, okay, that's that theme, or you maybe you hum along and that's the theme of that area or of that person. So in a way, it needs very precise thematic elements, and at the same time, you also want to give it an own artistic identity, and so that's why I'm trying to disconnect me, and I don't feel pressure. I'm old enough to to feel confident, I would say. I have done so many things in my life and experienced, that doesn't mean that I can, work on every film on my like my best, or I'm delivering my best. It can also happen that I have maybe a weak time, but at the same time, I'm doing all the things for pleasure, and I work in constellations, in different constellations together, which is I always see that as a big learning curve, and that's why I'm on Earth, I would say, to learn.
I like it. Well, this is Awards Buzz, and so I'm always like to ask whoever I'm speaking with, what is a great film or performance or show, or in your case, score that you've heard recently that's really sticking with you as particularly awards worthy?
Um, I have to say I haven't recently seen any films beyond my work because I was so drawn into it that well, there's Justin Fendrick's score for Poor Things. I think that's one that's stuck with me because I felt I'm glad that there are more people, in the film music world that are taking risks and also, creating scores that are maybe in the first place a little bit disturbing, where you feel like, what is that? But at the same time, that also helps the scores that are very traditional and very, like let's say epic composed, because you feel suddenly that those scores are also great, but it's not always the same. So I think to have a bright range of scores is very helpful for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to hearing your work soon at home on my TV with some of these shows, and looking forward to getting everyone to experience Conclave. Thank you so much, Volker. It was nice to see you again.
Well, thank you so much, Abby.